9 months ago, I came to SBA with a design problem. How do children learn? But the learning process is cloaked in an ephemeral mystique, relegated to the realm of biology and brain hemispheres. It seems like an unlikely space for a design intervention. But don't worry, I wasn't going all mad scientist and trying to figure out how to design super intelligent cyborgs. I was coming from a place of genuine curiosity, a curiosity born from the fact that when I was growing up in Mumbai, I attended preschool, kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high school. As all of you in this room did, in whatever shape or form. When we were young, we were all deliberately educated, as the eminent 20th century philosopher John Dewey would say. And as I talk further, I'd like to ask you all to think about your own experiences in classrooms as young children. Think about the weight of textbooks, the sound of chalk hitting the blackboard, the loud trill of the bell announcing recess. It is safe to say that going to school is one of the few universal experiences in the world, and it is subject to endless amounts of research and speculation. But I still couldn't readily find the answer to my design question, which was, how do children learn? So I ventured into a second grade classroom at the B School, an elite private school in Manhattan. I talked to Ananya and Ariana, aged 11 and 8 respectively, here in New York. I talked to technology teachers, French teachers, music teachers, and public school principals. I studied educational psychology, philosophy of technology, and cognitive archaeology to discover what I think we all knew all along, that the universal experience of learning in school features the child, the teacher, and a whole lot of things. And as we've seen today in my colleagues' research, the study of things equals the study of design. These things, or learning materials, are tools that education relies on to convey information and assist instruction. But in the conventional belief that learning is an intangible process between mind and information, we ignore these omnipresent learning materials and the accompanying physical and sensory experiences they bring with them. Through my thesis, I try to make the case that matter matters, and it has a powerful presence in classrooms today, by arguing that materiality is a source of and gives birth to forms of knowledge, and also emphasizing the need to incorporate the study of materiality into contemporary pedagogic discourse. To illustrate this, let me take you into Mrs. Balliot's second grade class at the B School, the private school I mentioned earlier. As I observed from afar, the children arranged themselves on the colorful rug at the front of the room to practice for their upcoming performance of Ella Fitzgerald's Manhattan. It was 9:30 on a cold Friday morning in February, and the kids were restless for their mid-morning break. But despite their twitching, they had no choice but to practice. Summer journeys to Niagara.
And to other places as we'll braid our hair. We'll save our fare.
This performance is part of the larger theme for the year titled, What Does It Mean to Be a New Yorker? The scope of this project is broad. The children study Massimo Vignelli's famous design for the New York subway with the help of a large paper map. They collaboratively work on a project called Manhattanrama, a large three-dimensional model of the city. They use Google Earth to map out neighborhoods and use CoSpaces to create virtual reality experiences through one city block of their choosing, complete with a voiceover. In teams of two, they use Tinkercad, a 3D modeling software, to design skyscrapers, which they then 3D print. They learn about New York's bridges via a slideshow and construct models of them out of cardboard and make charts. They also use Adobe Spark Video to create audio tours of New York's parks. And of course, their musical number is New York inspired as well. That's a lot of things. And if the New Yorker project teaches us anything, it is that learning in 2019 is a multimodal, multisensory, and multimedial affair. Through all of these different dynamic materials, the children experience the city of New York in unique but equally valuable ways. There are a number of theories which are powerful indications that these diverse experiences have pedagogic consequences. John Dewey and Jean Piaget would argue that according to their theory of constructivism, every material the child interacts with contributes new information to his or her schema or mental representation of the world. The cognitive archaeologist Lambros Malefuris would claim that thinking happens through action, and in adapting to all of these materials, the child generates forms of knowledge that earlier would have been inaccessible to them. He refers to the human impulse to make tools and links it to the evolution of intelligence by asking why we humans, more than any other species, make things, and how those things in return make us who or what we are. According to the socio-material perspective to learning, the child, as well as the objects, are participants or actors in the classroom network, showing us how materials shape teaching practices, influence curriculum, and even lead to the creation of new kinds of instruction. Peter Paul Verbeek's post-phenomenological approach to technology would define this classroom culture as a result of the mediation between the child and the world by things. It is clear that in 2019, as we find ourselves racing into a future where the very definition of materiality is being tested, learning is more urgently a design problem than ever before. As the world becomes more and more digital, I believe that it becomes even more physical through the objects we have to use to access the digital worlds. By treating these objects like backdrops for human cognition, we neglect that they are powerful tools in their own right. And to do so is to disregard that the pupil has a body and brings it to school along with his mind. While progressive thinkers like Dewey and Piaget heralded us into the 21st century, their ideas cannot sustain us much further. Across the world, there is a massive effort to create classrooms of the future. Move aside Froebel blocks. Something faster, sleeker, and shinier is probably going to take your place. But while there are great opportunities in these materials, due to the belief that the brain is the seat of learning, there is also widespread ignorance and widespread misuse. How can we prepare ourselves and children for the material renaissance that is certain to come? I suggest adding a new mode of thought to help educators observe their practice critically and for children to use materials consciously, material literacy. This addition will strengthen how we think about thinking or learn about learning. How would material literacy be implemented? I believe this is where design research and ultimately the design of learning materials can play a prominent role. Designers should be conscious of the unique capabilities for knowledge generation and bodily engagement that different tools possess, and create objects that respect that the learning process is about materials and humans, not as opposed to materials for humans. Eventually, material literacy should be able to influence how learning happens in even the most resource-poor places, helping schools to make informed decisions about learning materials to allocate their budget to based on their needs. Hopefully, the concept of material literacy will provide us with a set of measures with which to think of the future of education in a well-rounded sense. The implications of this stretch beyond the walls of the classroom. The social theorist and design reformer Ellen Key famously claimed in 1900 that the coming century would be the century of the child. She has been proven right, because the 20th century that we all grew up in has seen progress in so many fields, from psychology to medicine and even progressive education. But as we near 2020, we need to define what capital E education means to us and how materiality can play a prominent role in that conception. We need to ask ourselves, what can this century do for how children learn and the future of classrooms? What can we do for the material reality of childhood in the 21st century? Thank you.
Keep it going for Sneha.